All right, everybody. Welcome back to my podcast called In the Mind of Others. I do want to apologize for the long break in between episodes. I think I'll just stop apologizing at this point because I feel like that's all I do at the start of every episode. It just keeps happening, but it's all good. That's life, right? I do want to thank my previous guest, Andrew Heyer, for coming on and really telling everybody his incredible story, as I'm sure most of you all would agree. He overcame a lot and is really, really doing well. He's enjoying life, beautiful wife, beautiful kids, beautiful family. So it's cool to see the change that can happen in one's life, and I'm glad he came on to talk about it. So, Andrew, thank you. My next guest is one I've been wanting to have on for a while. He's a good man who cares about the younger generation a lot. With hopefully big political aspirations. So this is Mike Clark. Welcome.
Welcome
to the podcast. First off, how are you?
Doing well. Staying busy.
Yeah,
but
a lot of March Madness watching.
My team lost last night, Kevin. You're hurting.
Yeah,
You're hurting me. Starting strong.
I know,
but
he's one of the biggest UNC fans. So it's a rough morning.
I had my Iowa State, I had winning one bracket,
Ooh.
And UNC, I had winning the other, and they both lost last night. So we're done on the bracket challenges.
Oh, terrible!
It's really tough.
I love March Madness, one of my favorite, obviously, sports times of the year. But this year, I think it was the first year, probably maybe ninth grade, that I didn't do a bracket. I don't know why.
Sad.
It really is. And I was watching, I think it was Arizona and Clemson. Was that last night?
That was last night.
Yeah.
And that one I didn't have right either. Yeah. I went 1 for 4 last night, so it was really bad for
me. Yeah, that's all right. I was thinking on the way here, we both actually share something in common. Both of our brothers moved away. Yours to Tennessee, mine to Hawaii. Obviously, mine's back. It's probably hard, obviously, seeing your family move
weird.
Away.
It's actually very weird. My sister left, but she's 2 hours away, and we see her all the time.
Right.
I drove Trav's moving truck down last Friday.
Yeah.
And then flew home Saturday, and it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
To go to my parents' house last night, and it's just me and Devin, the parents, but everyone's kind of adjusting. But,
I think it's safe to say you're probably the favorite now, right?
I would hope so. There's not much competition left in Jersey for him, so Dev may be more of a favorite than me. But
oh, that's great. Yeah. Definitely, you're pulling in a close second, right?
Yeah. We'll take it, no doubt.
One of the reasons I wanted to interview Mike was not only for his love of politics, which we'll get in further, but for his engagement with the younger generation. For right now, what is your position? I believe you work for the church, right? And what do you specifically do?
So my main job is youth pastor.
Okay.
So that's kind of like all the church events, things like that. And then for the school, I'm the athletic director, which is basically just teens and their sports. And then I teach Bible and history to the teens. So I teach all the 7th through 12th graders during school. Good. And then I do the sports program and then the church side of the teens. So anything that has to do with teenagers at the church or school, you will find me close behind. So
I always enjoy the Thursday night reels.
Oh yeah,
with
fun.
Yeah, every Thursday night. What time? Obviously, if you want to explain what time everything is.
In the last couple of years, we started during our Thursday service at 7 p.m. They're all in the auditorium. They do a prayer, and then all the teens split out. We go in the coffee shop. Devin makes some type of food or snack that they all get excited about.
Always something incredible.
And she's a great cook, so the kids love it. And then play a game. And then we do like a short Bible lesson. Right. And it is actually pretty short. Some people are like, do you ever preach in there? I'm like, we do, but it's probably like 15, 20 minutes. Okay. But the kids like it. It's almost like a youth activity every week. Yeah. At least that's how I feel about it. I think they enjoy it. I don't know. They don't tell me they don't, but... But it's pretty fun. I have a good time with it.
So. Good. No, that's awesome. Obviously, getting kids involved in church is something that our church has been a huge part of. Yeah. Especially when it comes to bring kids on Thursday, Sunday. Yeah. Obviously, our bus ministry is huge. How many teens are you averaging?
So we have different times, like where they'll all come. So Sunday afternoons is typically where most of our teens from the buses come in for our 2 o'clock Sunday service.
That's right.
And that's probably 50 to 60.
Okay.
And then we have our ones that drive in with parents. That's probably another 50.
Wow. Okay.
So most of the times we don't have them all together at the same time. But if you total it up, 100 would be a close estimate to where we're at.
That's probably. Very good.
So, yeah, it's a lot of kids for sure. And when you get them together, it's crazy.
It's probably a expensive grocery bill.
Oh my goodness!
Devin trying to do all that cooking.
We're always working on a budget. We're trying to find creative ways to.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. What is your motive, or what is your passion for engaging with, obviously, the youth?
Honestly, I never thought I was going to work with teenagers.
Really?
I always pictured youth pastors and teen guys as like these big energy, crazy.
Like a TJ?
Exactly like Brother TJ. Right. And I'm the opposite of that.
Right.
I'm like super low key compared to these kids. And I play chess every day of my life at home. Like, not what you would think.
Right.
But it kind of just worked out to where when I was finishing college.
Yeah.
We needed somebody, and I'd been here forever. And so they were like, what do you think? And I was like, sure. Like, I know these kids. I went to school with a lot of them.
Yeah.
And so, honestly, the passion is more developed as I've been doing it.
Right.
Full-time youth pastor, this is my 3rd year.
Okay.
But then I was kind of interning for like 2 years before that. So we're going on almost 5 years with this group.
Wow.
To where I've watched most of them come from junior high, and now some of them are seniors. But just trying to connect with them on stuff that I was just dealing with not that long ago.
Right.
And that's why I try and get them to understand. Like, some of the leaders at the church are mid-50s at this point.
Yeah.
My dad, Brother Charlie. And so they're still connecting, but it's different.
Yeah.
It's not the same world that they grew up in. And so some of the kids will be able to look at me and kind of be like, all right, he actually kind of went through this same stuff.
Exactly.
And we're able to connect on some of those things. Right. So that's been good. But
yeah. And it's funny you mention that, because it reminds me of, it's not like you and me, well, you're in your 20s. I just hit 30.
Yeah.
I'm an old head now, but, we wouldn't be going into the senior saints class.
Right.
Right. Because we can try and connect with them, but it's, like you said, on a whole different, whole different level.
Yeah.
And you kind of answered a little bit, but do you see, and obviously many of you may know his dad, but Brother Mike, one of the most awesomest guys, he's a nut. He's crazy. He's crazy, but I love him. He's awesome. Do you see how your dad raised you and Trav and Kay, and how you grew up as sort of like a viewpoint or an example of how you want to engage with the youth?
Yeah. My dad was always strong on what he would say.
Right.
But he also explained things very well.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes as kids, it's like, all right, just do this because that's what I told you to do.
Right.
And he was not like that.
Right.
Which I appreciated. Like, my personality is, I want to know why we do everything that we do.
Yeah.
And my mom's kind of like that. Other people, they don't care.
Right.
Kayla was just like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Yeah.
But I'm not built like that. So I'm like, okay, why?
Right.
And he didn't have any problem saying, okay, here's why. And certain things that I thought weren't that big of a deal, he would tell me. He's like, that's fine.
Right.
Like, he didn't say everything is right or wrong exactly. He's like, but here's why I think this way.
Right.
And so this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of it now has made sense.
Right.
After the fact.
Yeah.
Meaning I never stayed at people's houses.
Okay.
And that, as a kid, I was like, I'm the weird kid.
Right.
Like, I'm going to a sleepover.
Yeah.
And I leave at 2 a.m.
Right.
Because I'm not allowed to stay over.
Yeah.
And I was like,
why?
Why am I the weird kid? But now I look at the world and I'm like, I don't know that I would want to just drop my kid off at somebody's house.
Right.
And trust that.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be fine.
Right.
Whether that's what they're exposed to.
Right.
They're just crazy. And so I see a lot more now.
Yeah.
But he did a good job explaining all that to where I never really was upset or angry And that's a big thing, because if you don't explain things to kids, they're just going to swing to the total opposite side and just rebel against everything, and then you got way bigger problems.
And that's right. And it's funny you said, I was the same way. My parents would never let us sleep over.
Yeah.
And I thought, dude, why?
Yes.
Like, what is wrong with you? I swear I'm okay. I'm a good boy. I'm a good boy. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I swear.
Right.
Yeah, that is a good point. Obviously as parents, they see things differently.
Yeah.
And then as a kid, you think, oh, they're just crazy. But then you grow up and start to see the same things that they saw. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, okay, now it all makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't, and it stinks that you don't think of it at the moment. Yeah. But looking back, I wish I could say, dude, trust me, you're going to, this is for your, for your good.
Yeah.
Has there been a time while working with the teens that you thought that there was a person that may be too lost from your reach, or obviously anybody else's, and if so, how did that make you feel as a youth pastor?
So, again, officially 3 years doing this. When you first start, like when I would have been 22 as a youth pastor.
Yeah.
If there's an 18-year-old senior,
right,
just being realistic, we're going to be real limited in our connection.
True.
Because they're headed out.
Right.
When they were in 7th grade, I was a senior.
Yeah.
So I'm going to camp telling them, all right, you need to look out for the junior hires. Right. When they were a junior hire, I was the one that we were messing with them. Yeah. So it's like don't do to them what I did to it was just, and it was funny and they were fine.
Right.
But in the last couple of years, I'm starting to see kids who now I think the 7th graders were in kindergarten when I was a senior. So the age gap has separated to where now there's been a lot more of a connection.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's anyone that I would look at and say they're too far gone.
Yeah.
I think the thing that makes me the most nervous is when they start disconnecting. Like, okay, we have events, or even if it's just like me in the hallway, and they're ducking me in the hallway, that's when I get concerned.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the kids, they're texting me, yo, let's go play Fortnite. And I'm like, no. Like, some kids ask me every day if I'm going to be on playing Fortnite, and I'm like, no. Like, I very rarely play, and if I do, I'm playing with you.
Right. That's great.
So a lot of it is like fun stuff. All right, let's go play basketball. Let's do this.
Right.
And as soon as that starts to stop, then I realize that something's wrong because they're avoiding me for a reason.
Right.
And then there starts to be concern.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But I don't know that I've had a lot, thankfully, in the last couple years to where I look at and they are like totally going off the grid.
Yeah.
But it does make you nervous. I mean, you spend a lot of time with these kids.
Oh yeah.
You're trying to invest in them and do whatever you can for them.
Right.
And some of them don't see it, which is just sad.
Yeah.
And some of their parents, that's who I feel bad for. I mean, I look at some of the parents and how much they care about their kids, and the parents are talking to me, and the kids are clueless. And I'm like, it's actually just disappointing knowing what the kid's missing out on. You know what I mean? Like, they, like what we were saying, how we didn't understand everything with our parents.
Yeah.
They don't understand it, but to a whole different degree to where they don't care anymore.
Right.
And they don't want anyone's opinion.
Right.
And that's where I'm like, it's kind of upsetting to where I'm like, I don't know what else I can do for you other than we're going to pray for you and
it's tough.
Hope for the best.
Kind of puts you in a tough spot. So that part that you were just talking about where you're sitting talking to parents, what is that like? I feel like it would probably for the most part be like you said, concerning, but you're speaking to parents that are obviously older than you about how their child is doing. What kind of goes through your mind and Devin's mind, when speaking to parents about?
It's definitely an interesting dynamic because, again, I don't have kids at all. So for the TJ working with the teens and with me has been a very positive thing.
Good.
Because he's raised multiple teenagers who are now into their adult life.
Yeah.
And so he has that life experience.
Right.
But again, I still have conversations multiple this week with parents about different stuff. Some of it there's a problem. Some of it's not a problem. We just want to keep there from being one.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I try and stick to here's truth.
Right.
Because parenting, there's different philosophies.
Right.
But I can't really give a experience philosophy to anybody.
Right.
That's worth anything.
Right.
I can give them all the thoughts in the world,
yeah.
and they're going to be like, all right, but that doesn't help me because you have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
And that's realistic. Like,
right.
Don't take parenting advice from someone who's never been a parent.
Exactly.
So obviously the Bible you can't argue with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure.
And then there's things out there. The big thing right now is phones. The screen time.
Yeah.
Screen accountability. And so I push with parents all the time. You need to know what's going on the kids' phones.
Yeah.
And that's not my job.
Right.
And so parents that are concerned, they'll come to me and we'll set up things, and I'll go through the kid's phone with them and say, all right, here's how you do this setting, and here's how you do this setting.
Right.
And try and give them tools to do what they want. I mean, a lot of parents want to do what's best for their kid,
correct,
but some of them don't know.
They don't know how to.
Yeah, so I try and get tools together from other youth ministries, from Brother Charlie, from my dad, whoever else.
Right.
And then I try and simplify and share with parents as much as possible to try and make life easy for them.
Yeah.
And some of the newer issues we face.
No, I think that, obviously that's awesome that you helping them out in an area. Like you said, you don't know how parenting is. Yeah. A lot of them don't know technology. right. So you kind of both are going along the lines of in new things, but also helping out.
Yeah.
Helping each other out along the way.
Yeah.
What is the most rewarding thing that you get and feel about working with teenagers?
So I think the biggest thing I repeat to them all the time is you have to do it for yourself. Because you grow up, and when you're 12, to be honest, in 7th grade, you're not doing much because you choose to.
Right.
It's like, okay, I'm here because I have to be here. And that's not always bad, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think when they start to mature enough to decide for themselves, that's when I get excited. Good. Because that shows that there's potential. We actually have something real going on here.
Right.
And we can work from that point.
Yeah.
And that's, I hit over and over again. The simple stuff of you need to read your Bible, by yourself.
Yeah.
Is every day.
Right.
Every week in teen church. And they look at me every time I say it. And I'm like, I know I say it every week, but it doesn't really get past this.
Right.
If you don't understand it.
Right.
And once you start to see, I do on the YouVersion app, we have a Bible program that I text out, and people can join.
Oh, nice.
And then you can all comment in there if you want to. Most of them don't comment. Okay. A lot of times it's me commenting by myself. A couple others will chime in here and there.
Yeah.
But stuff like that is what's cool. When I see a name pop up who completed their reading for the day.
Yeah.
And then them share a thought about it. It's not a complex thing at all.
Right.
But knowing, okay, nobody just forced them to do this.
Right.
But there's a desire there on their own.
Exactly.
And then that leads into all other areas where it's pretty cool.
So seeing that progression is something that you feel is probably the most rewarding for you.
Yeah, choosing to be a Christian for yourself as opposed to just doing what everyone says to do.
Right.
And that's a big change.
Right. And even, like you said, talking about the parents, separating the parents, because obviously, like you said, 7th graders, they're doing what their parents tell them to do. Oh yeah, I read the Bible,
Yeah.
But as they get older, doing things because 18 is coming, adulthood is coming. So if there's one thing that you could change to better help the youth, what would that be?
Change
Let's see. So the first thought that comes to my mind is obviously the access that kids have on their cell phones.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what we had discussed a little bit ago. Do you think it would be maybe an easier schedule, less stress from society on kids, or could it be just hey, maybe some kids are struggling, and if I could change, I would want parents to be more involved, or parents to even be less involved.
Yeah.
Anything that
I think parent involvement is huge.
Yeah.
And you can see that in kids' behavior starting at 4 years old, or 18.
Right.
You can see which ones had a strong home life and which ones didn't. Phones is huge. When you look at even on I'm a Apple guy. I have the iPad, iPhone. If you look at the screen time settings, what you can do, it's actually like incredible that you can lock your kid's phone down to where the only app that works is like the phone. Not even texting. And you can set time limits for every app. You can say, okay, at this time it shuts off completely. I'm like, there are so many things here.
That you can
the phones they're crazy. Like when I was in high school, I got a phone right before I turned 17. And I think I was the third person out of 17 people in my class to get a phone. Like I was one of the first to get them. Now, it's 5th and 6th graders.
I know.
Who have a fully unlocked iPhone with all the social media platforms. Like I don't think that's a good plan at all. I mean, obviously, the things that you can get exposed to on accident. If you download TikTok, what it just suggests for you, your 12-year-old has no business seeing. And you can manipulate the algorithms by who you follow and what you interact with. But it's too late at that point. Meaning you're 12, you're just scrolling through, you have no idea, and things are popping up, and you can't take that away once it's there. But again, that's parental decision. Meaning there's ways around. Your kid don't need a phone at 12 years old. And it is nice. My parents said when you get a license, you get a phone. If you can drive by yourself. Me, Kayla had a phone. Travis didn't have a phone. I remember my mom looking at me. She's like, it'd be really nice if he had a phone because I would like to be able to contact him, but I'm not going to do it. Like she was getting to the point where like, this is really annoying that I have to like call the bus driver to get him. But she still was like, it's not worth giving him one at this point. Both for the principle of it and just
in general.
Both parental involvement, but the screens and the electronics is who you can chat with, even on video game systems.
Is insane.
You're talking with people you've never met from around the world, and you can't control it. So it is kind of a scary...
Now, is that something that obviously, you're well aware of the technology, but is that something that you're seeing with some of the teens or whatever that may be dealing with? And TikTok is, all throughout our society right now, and it's, the topic of many conversations. Do you feel as though TikTok is affecting your kids or your
they're teens? On it. I just think electronics in general, like the amount of time spent, if I was to go through the youth group and say, let me see your time per day, it would be, with them being in school 8 hours a day, it would probably be 7-8 hours a day on screens.
Wow.
Which is, I don't know how that's even possible. But that affects all areas of life. Maturity, communication, even just go outside and do something.
Exactly.
But they live for video games, phones, and that's how they connect with people. Their only connections are online in these groups. As opposed to, we used to go places or... Let's go find something to do. Go to the park. That's unheard of. Nobody goes to the park anymore. Which is, it's just, everything's changing. But TikTok is a factor. And I'm not a huge TikTok guy. I have an account. But I don't.
You're not.
I'm more active on the Twitter side of social media than I am, or X or whatever.
X. So that's obviously what we were talking about was TikTok, and that is one of the how do I put it, the more popular social media apps. Do you see a lot of parents having a stance on that type of stuff, or do they just not really know?
Some of them don't know. I've seen some parents who will download every app their kid has that's a social media and follow and keep tabs with. And I tell them, go for it. I don't want to be the guy having to inform you that this doesn't look right. And again, it's the whole parental involvement's huge. And parents that take initiative and say, all right, I'll let you do this because that's what the kids are doing. But not without supervision.
Exactly.
And that's where it's okay. I had video games as a kid. I've had PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, PlayStation all the way. But also, if I was on the PlayStation when my dad walked in,
right,
and got home from church,
right,
it was off.
Yeah.
It was go outside. It didn't matter if I was on it for 10 minutes or 2 hours.
Right.
If he was walking in and I was sitting there playing, it was done.
Yeah.
And so he set, I think our limit was like an hour a day.
Okay.
Which now I look and I'm like, man, it'd be nice if I just had an hour a day to just do nothing but play video games.
Right.
But then I was like, dude, an hour a day, like that's nothing.
Right.
Everyone just goes home and plays for hours.
Yeah, yeah.
But then me and Trav would be playing basketball or finding something entertaining, wrestling, something crazy. But it is just crazy.
It's insane.
But yeah, my dad never let us really become the video game kids, which I'm glad about.
Yeah.
Especially now because almost everybody is.
Right. Now, do you contribute, obviously like we were just talking about, like kids going outside, and we don't see it much anymore. Do you believe that's like a fault of society as a whole? Like we just don't really push our kids to do that? Or do you think it's more so they're just so enamored with the technologies, such as social media and games and all?
I think some of both. I mean, some parents are scared to let their kids go outside.
Yeah.
And they don't want to go out with them.
Right.
So it's easier to tell your kid, hey, watch the show.
Exactly.
And you see it with babies. Meaning, if I'm babysitting and a kid starts screaming, I'm immediately pulling up some TV show on my phone and having them watch it.
Yep.
Because I don't want to figure out, I don't know how to figure out what's wrong with the kid.
Yeah.
If he can't talk to me and he doesn't want to eat, I'm out of options. So here you go, TV.
Right.
And I'm not saying that that's all what parents do, but in reality, it's an easier option.
It's exactly.
If it's all right, we're going to go ride bikes as a family, or you're going to sit in there and play a video game and I can get work done.
Right.
Yeah, the easy choice is do it. And the kids then become dependent on these screens.
Right.
Like I told you in teen church, I probably preach 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Unless I'm feeling it and I give them 25. but like that's that great. Is, if I preached 40 minutes, we'd lose half the kids. Like attention wise. They wouldn't be able to, and you can develop that and they can learn that, but a lot of them would be gone.
Right.
They'd be looking around like, what can I eat next?
Yeah.
Or where can I, they'd all be trying to go to the bathroom, like anything to give them a break.
Yeah.
They can't focus that long because everything's screens, everything's moving.
Right.
And it has become like part of the culture, and it's probably messed up even some of our like brain, how it even functions.
Right.
That we're so dependent on screens.
And that's what I was kind of thinking of, our societal norms, face-to-face conversation.
Yeah.
A lot of people are so, stuck in their phone that they're not paying attention to. Because I remember when I first became an all-star, I was working up in North Philly at Temple. And I remember for overtime, I remember specifically this one girl was walking down the street by herself in an area that is not the most safest. And the officer who was training me at the time said, look at that girl. She has no idea where she is, and she has her head in the phone, not paying attention. Right? So I kind of feel like that's just, honestly, society now. Our heads are in our phone, and we're not paying attention to anything that's going on around us.
Right.
And it sucks, obviously, the teenagers doing that, because once they begin that process, then next thing you know, it develops into how they deal with adults. So it's kind of tough. You're in a tough spot, obviously. The parents are in a tough spot. But I have faith. We're good.
Let's just keep at it.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Don't give up.
Yeah. That's funny that the one thing you were talking about when the kids start crying, the best thing about being an uncle is you can always give the kids back.
100%. 100%.
Dude, yeah. It's the absolute best. Yeah, look at your tablet. Yeah, look at the whole 6 hours.
Give them something they're not allowed to eat.
Yep, exactly. No, that's awesome. But so let's switch from one of your passions, which is obviously working with teenagers, to another one of your passions, which is politics.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Me and Mike discuss politics quite a bit whenever we do see each other. We're both kind of nerdy, I think, when it comes to politics. No clearly, I have my Reagan Bush 84 shirt. All right. I figured they have both passed away, so this does not count as an endorsement, obviously. So, Philadelphia Police Department, you can't get me in trouble. All right, I have not endorsed anybody. Please, nobody file a complaint. All right, we're totally fine. What made you really get engaged in politics?
I started following politics just like as an interest, probably 11th grade. 11th grade was 2015, 2016 for me. Okay. So that was obviously a big year politically.
I wonder what happened.
Yeah, right. So like end of my junior year, we're coming into primaries.
Right.
Which would have been Hillary and Trump.
Yeah.
And I remember everyone saying, because I didn't really know a lot about Trump. Like I knew who he was, but I was too young for all of the reality TV and whatever other stuff he would have done.
Right.
So they're like, oh, it's Cruz or Rubio or these other guys that they were all coming behind and supporting.
Yeah.
And I remember watching like Trump. Oh, he won the first one, but that won't last. And it just kept going. Yeah. And I was like, this is crazy.
Right.
And I didn't know anything politically, but I just thought it was interesting. And then it just kept going from there. Continued to grow. And now here we are. My keychain is the GOP symbol. Yeah. Everywhere I go, it's conservative Republican politics.
Did you ever see yourself at all being interested?
I saw myself as like a Twitter nerd who just observed.
Yeah.
But I never really saw it going further than that.
Okay.
But I always find it interesting. Yeah. Like the local, like people ask me all the time, a lot of national, they're like, oh, he likes politics. What's the national stuff?
Right.
I follow New Jersey state politics way more.
Really? Okay.
Which is like the stuff that nobody cares about.
Right.
But I am so intrigued by like the intricate day-to-day details of things.
Right.
And then obviously the big stories, presidential stuff, and who has the majorities and things I'm following. But outside of that, New Jersey mainly all day, which is kind of depressing. Yeah.
In case you couldn't tell, Mike is from New Jersey.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. Okay, so I say this because as citizens, it is our duty and our right to get out and vote, and people really should be engaged in politics. Kind of figuring out. I always like to say, I just like to know who's who. Yeah. And so engaging in your own politics, like you said, the federal stuff, everybody knows about that.
Yeah.
But knowing who your county chair is, or your head of education for the county board or whatever.
Right.
Those are the types of things that really affect, honestly, our everyday lives.
Yeah.
We're talking about kids and teenagers who's leading the Department of Education for New Jersey, and how that can affect where we send our kid to school.
Right.
I think that's obviously, as citizens, we're supposed to really be engaged in. You kind of answered it already, but was there a certain moment in political history that got you engaged? Obviously, that would be
that's where I started
Trump.
Following.
Right.
But like honestly, when we had COVID, we realized how important state politics was to everyday life.
Right.
Like I don't know how many people knew who the governor of New Jersey was before COVID.
Yeah.
But a very small percentage compared to now.
Oh yeah.
Because it was like, well, what does he do?
Right.
The only person that matters is the president. Right. And you can see that in voting numbers. Yeah. Like people don't vote unless it's a presidential year.
Right.
All of a sudden, Florida's wide open.
Yeah.
And we can't do anything.
Right.
And it's like, who decided this? And we're like, oh, who's this Murphy guy?
Right.
And it's like, well, you could have thought about that 4 years ago. But it's realistic until something happens.
Right.
You don't always pay attention. And so that was where I really, like, for myself looked. And at that point, 2020, when COVID hit, I had just turned 21.
Okay.
So I was older, about to be finished college.
Right.
And so obviously it's a lot different than being a junior in high school.
Yeah.
And I was actually in D.C. when all the COVID stuff went down.
Oh, really?
I was on the bus coming back from the Capitol when the NBA shut down and when all these leagues shut down.
Right.
All the colleges, when I actually put something on Twitter, I was like, I'm feeling a little sick. Maybe Vision should close for the semester. And my dad called me like 10 minutes later. He's like, he's like, dude, you don't understand. Like, this could be a serious thing. And nobody knew what it was. So I was like, oh, this is... And all the college kids are retweeting it.
Yeah.
We come into school the next day. They send everybody home.
Yeah.
But I ended up deleting the tweet because I was like, oh, I'm not trying to upset anybody.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I realized, I was like, this is not like some joke, apparently.
Yeah.
People are actually taking this very seriously.
Right.
Like, it was nuts. And I was mind blown by this.
Yeah.
But COVID was definitely a political wake-up call as to who controls what. And different decisions.
Right.
So.
Right. And like you said, a lot of people probably didn't know who Governor Murphy was at the time.
Yeah.
I just thought in my mind about when your grandpa called Murphy a tyrant in front of all the news cameras. That is just awesome. If you don't know his grandpa, Pastor Clark, he is a legend. He'll say hi to you and then give you a kidney shot.
Yeah.
Shot right to the kidney. Mm-hmm. And, usually in his hunting gear.
Always.
I'm still waiting for him to show up in church.
Yeah.
And, in the hunting gear and for Sunday night service or whatever. But if you can, you mentioned COVID and obviously all that had happened in the church. Can you kind of explain what really went on, the process from that March, if I'm not mistaken, I thought it was like 13th when the government really kind of closed everything.
Yeah.
From that March 13th until that, I think it was Memorial Day weekend when we reopened.
Yeah.
What kind of went on throughout that time and what led and followed after we opened?
Talking just politically, you're saying?
Yeah. And what, our processes were to open.
So if you look at like who has power to do what, shutting down the state, and especially like the churches.
Right.
The Constitution clearly says, here's your First Amendment right.
Right.
And it was being overridden because people thought they were going to die.
Yeah.
Now, thousands of people died. Like, nobody's arguing that.
Correct.
But the government, and not even just Governor Murphy, I mean, everybody was on board.
Right.
You can look at Donald Trump, and he is like the right wing, and he's on board. Like, they're like, all right, we're going to do this because this is what needs to happen. Correct. And so it wasn't a partisan issue until afterwards.
Yeah.
And then we're going to paint it as like, well, they wanted to shut everything down. We didn't. Now, Republicans opened earlier, but I mean, everyone was concerned. They said millions of people are going to die.
Right.
And so they're like, all right, we're going to put these measures in place to protect you.
Right.
When in reality, it's not their job. Right. The government's job is not to do things to keep you safe, meaning in our day-to-day living.
Right.
To say you can't leave your house for your own safety.
Right.
And if we were to say that now, if the government looked at you and said, all right, you're not allowed to leave your town.
Right.
For your own safety, people would be like, I'm going to do whatever I want.
Exactly. Right.
But when there's fear and when there's a risk or a threat, a lot of people are willing, they're like, take whatever you want, protect me.
Right.
And that's where government gets more power than it was intended to have.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened, at least in New Jersey.
Right.
The governor's stepping in and he's like, here's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
For your own safety, and most people were okay with it.
Right.
Some people looked at him and said, that's not your job.
Right.
And he said, watch me.
Yeah.
And nobody really told him he couldn't.
Right.
And still to this day, there's no repercussion from what happened.
Right.
Which is kind of crazy if you look at all of what actually went down.
Oh, yeah.
But everyone was kind of just on board. And that's anytime there's a tragedy or a big scare,
right,
people will hand over freedom and liberty and say, please protect me.
Right.
When in reality, you should just be able to have your freedom and decide, okay, is this right for my family?
Right.
Because again, the health stuff is real. Like if you were someone with health conditions
right,
and COVID made you susceptible to you were going to die,
right,
please don't go out
right,
and do things you shouldn't do.
Right.
But if you're 18, you have no health issues,
right,
and you want to go to the gym or you want to go to church, they can tell you, hey, here's a risk. I have no problem with that.
Right.
Hey, guys, here's what we recommend.
Right.
This is what you probably should do.
Right.
And I say, no, that's on me.
Right.
If I get COVID and if I get messed up from it, you informed.
Right.
And I decided to not listen.
Right.
But that's life. You learn from things. And when they decided to say you don't have a choice, that's where problems come.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I was like, no.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the problem. And, going into the argument of, at least from what I had heard, the argument that you just said, well, don't go outside, whatever. Their argument would be, well, it's my right to go outside.
Right.
Well, if we say, COVID is, okay, we understand it's real, okay, but their argument would be, well, we need to look at it as a whole. And that's fine, but the problem was the viewpoint of looking at it as a whole was not carried out through the policy.
Right.
And we can go on and explain how, like your uncle has said, Walmart was able to stay open, right? And understandably, everybody needs their food. But then you have the liquor store.
Right.
Now, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, clearly. But it does not say in the First Amendment that the liquor store, is a right.
Right.
The bicycle shop, I know your uncle uses that a lot.
It's crazy.
That was allowed to be open, considered essential. But when you look at a church or a synagogue or a temple, because a lot of people looked at the Christian argument and said, oh, you only care about your religion. Well, no, that's actually not correct, because if one religion is persecuted, right, they're all going to be.
Right.
The First Amendment protects those who want to worship and those who don't.
Yeah.
And I feel as though once again, the policy was not carried out in a way, because I always think of it as, if the government truly cared for everybody, then nothing would be open.
Yeah. Nothing
at all. And once again, it kind of boils down to the argument of, I'm trying to figure out how the best way to say this is, if you want to violate the Constitution, okay, you probably should do it for everybody, and not just a few.
Right.
And that's that is what I felt as though the problem was. It wasn't even. And
the
it wasn't
selective
fair.
Enforcement.
Exactly.
100%.
Right.
We can go to a protest for BLM.
Right.
And we're all good. And Murphy is there in the middle.
Right.
But you show up with a mask on.
Right.
Which we don't even need to talk about that. The spacers, the temperature scans.
Right.
Everything.
Right.
And you're getting a ticket.
Right.
It doesn't make common sense. Like,
exactly.
Why is there a target? And the Jewish synagogues got destroyed in Jersey. Like up in North Jersey, guys getting arrested, like crazy stuff. So it wasn't even just the Christians, like you were saying. It's multiple faith groups that felt strongly about their right to assemble.
Right.
Weren't able to, but the right to protest was okay.
Right.
And it is more dangerous to protest in a tight group than it is to sit 6 feet apart from someone with a mask on.
Right.
But it wasn't handled that way.
No.
And that was part of the reason. And even in our lawsuit, I'm almost positive we talked about that selective enforcement and how it wasn't uniform in its, how they handle it.
And adapting to it, right. And, obviously we were talking about our church. I'll go over some of the processes that we had. Obviously, we had to register to go to church. We were only at 25% capacity, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. You parked in between a spot. You didn't even park next to each other.
Yeah.
There was a spot in between. Obviously, the masks, the temperature check. If I'm not mistaken, I believe we had somebody escort you to your seat.
Yeah, you had an assigned seat.
Assigned seating. Once again, the 6 feet spacers, the row in between. Mm-hmm. The church purchased I think they're called HEPA filters.
Yeah,
right.
We have 4 of them in there.
Which recirculated the air every. I think your uncle said 3.12 minutes or something like that. Obviously, no touching the songbooks. When people would go into the bathroom, it would only be one person or one family unit at a time, and somebody would go in and clean the bathroom after each time.
Yeah.
No nursery, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So there's all of these steps, and I remember your uncle on his CNN interview saying, unless we have the hazmat suits, I don't really know if there's anything else that we can do. Right, so you look at all those steps, all those steps that the church took just to be in accordance with this, these policies. But then you can go to Walmart and all you need is a mask.
Yep.
And you saw on Twitter, some people weren't even wearing masks. Some people had a flip flop on their face, like whatever they could find, just to say it just. Yeah. It was just crazy.
It was a wild time.
It was it was definitely a crazy time. What race did you run for in New Jersey?
Sure. So I decided last December, right after Christmas, that I was going to run for state assembly.
Okay.
Which in New Jersey, it would be like the House of Representatives in D.C., just in Trenton.
Okay.
And so the state senator for my district was retiring.
Okay.
And so the one state assemblyman was moving up to run for Senate, and the other assemblywoman resigned.
Okay.
And they had all been Democrat. And so both assembly seats were wide open.
Right.
And the Senate seat was technically open, but there was a guy who was the assemblyman before, so he had some track record to go off of. And so I honestly don't even know how it all shook out to happen, honestly. Yeah. I had followed that race 2 years before in the governor's race, and it was relatively close. And then they redistricted, and it became closer.
Right.
And so I looked, and I was like, oh, this is cool. You got to be 21, and I was 24.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, this is cool.
Yeah.
So I basically filed paperwork and said, I'm either going to run for this or my town level seat.
Okay.
Because our town municipal club was going to run a full slate of candidates for the first time in 25 years.
Wow.
So we had a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, we're going to go here or here. And I met with some of the political leaders. And at first it was like, oh, you're probably not going to run for the assembly spot.
Right.
And then things shook out, and then they asked me to run for the assembly spot.
Really? Okay.
So I did.
Yeah, that's legit.
And then all of that kind of shook out into a big civil war where we had a primary battle and all that crazy stuff.
Right.
But really I was just like, all right, I'm going to be involved at some level, win or lose.
Right.
And again, when I think I filed my paperwork, I was 24. And so...
Yeah.
If you know anything about the Republican Party, there's not many 24-year-olds anywhere, let alone on the ticket.
Yeah.
So that was actually comical. Everywhere I went, people were like, what are you doing?
Right.
This everyone else is retired and this is what we're doing for our new hobby.
Right.
And I'm here running around doing what I'm doing.
Right. Being able to run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we ran for state assembly, didn't win.
Okay.
But learned an incredible amount about politics.
Good.
Things I would have never thought before, which is good. And so I'm still involved.
Would you do it again?
I'm not opposed to doing it again.
Yeah.
The same seat comes up in 2025.
Okay.
Which I'm not saying at all that I'm running for it then.
Yeah. I was going to say, are we about to have our first candidacy?
No, I'm planning to run for school board in my town this year.
Good. Okay.
That's nonpartisan, so I'm just going to put my name on there. And again, I don't know if I'll win or not, but somebody has to do it.
Yeah.
And so staying involved in politics for sure.
Yeah, good.
Whether or not I run for an assembly seat, there's a couple people that ran before who are probably running again, so I'm not looking to get in some huge fight with anybody.
Right.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But as different things shake out, things change all the time, and that's 2025. So there's still a long time before that. But I don't think I'll ever be disconnected from politics ever, whether as a candidate or just as an informed voter.
Yeah,
I will be connected.
Right. I think that's more what we need more of.
Yeah.
Informed citizens, informed voters, definitely. As we were obviously talking about, informed citizenry, informed votership.
Yeah.
Have you noticed, has there been an uptick in people getting more engaged with politics, even at that local level?
Yeah, I think since COVID,
yeah,
moms want to know what's happening with their kids.
Yeah.
Like the whole parental rights movement is a real thing.
Yeah.
And that's not partisan.
Right.
That's both sides, just people saying, tell me what's going on.
Right.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Like we need, and I've, as like someone, so if you know anybody who's run for office, a lot of times people become engaged, at least for a short period of time.
Yeah.
So like me at the church, I'm running.
Right.
All of a sudden, a lot of people are asking questions, and they're like, all right, what's going on here? What's going on here?
Right.
Every election day, my phone is blowing up.
Right.
Who do I vote for this?
Right.
Who should I vote for this? Especially school board. Right. Nonpartisan, people are like, who's good, who's bad?
Yeah.
And so some people are paying more attention, which is good.
Good.
But obviously we got a long way to go. But the whole schools thing with kids and the parental rights in the last 2-3 years
has been huge.
The local level,
good.
Way more involvement.
Right, and I kind of see that going across the country. Yeah. I don't think it would be specifically for just one state.
Yeah, no.
It seems obviously, like you said, because of COVID. Mm-hmm. If you were elected today, what is the first thing that you would work on?
So, if I was elected today, it'd be in Jersey.
Yeah. And we'll take it from, let's take it from the assembly level, and then we'll go down to the local education board.
So, anyone that lives in Jersey, like, whatever party you're on, taxes are, like, ridiculous.
Yeah.
If you look at the budget in the last 7 years, I think it's more than doubled. Since Christie left, it's gone up twice as much, which is just and for what?
Right.
Like, obviously, inflation happened.
Right.
And every year inflation happens to where budgets are increasing and there's different things.
Right.
Like, some people say taxes are never going to increase.
Yeah.
Well, that's not realistic because if your bills are increasing at your house, you would expect for everyone else they're going to increase. So
exactly.
That's just real life. And some people say, I would never raise taxes. For bad reasons, don't raise them, obviously. But, like, cost of living, there's an adjustment to that. So, like, things are going to happen. But, like, the spending's out of control.
Yeah.
In Trenton.
Yeah.
And you can even look at, and this may get me in trouble, some of the, like, elected officials. So, in New Jersey, the state legislator is still part-time.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Up until the end of, I think, this coming year, I don't know when it goes into place, the salary for a state legislator is like $49,000 a year.
Okay.
So that's not a lot of money.
Right.
They just voted actually to raise that to like 80-something thousand.
Wow.
And I think it's still staying part-time. Yeah. But they're like, oh, we haven't raised it in 20 years, so we're going to raise it. And I'm like, all right, whatever. Like, you just voted to give yourself a huge raise.
100%.
Some people will not like that at all.
Right.
But whatever, that happened.
Yeah.
But if you look at a lot of these guys and ladies that are elected, they're engineers, lawyers.
Yeah.
And the contracts that they get through the state
for
their own law firms and their own engineering firms would blow your mind.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like, and so that's people don't like politics.
Right.
Like, they don't have a problem with government.
Right.
But when it's these games, like, okay, you're going to say all of these things you're going to do for me.
Yeah.
And you are making millions off of my tax dollars.
Right.
No, I'm not going to be okay with that.
Yeah.
But also people look and say, well, how do we change that? Like, what is the answer to fixing that?
Right.
They're the ones with the power.
Right.
We can't control. And so the spending's crazy.
Yeah.
So the taxes stuff, but also, like, why are we allowing this to be a thing.
Right.
Like, I don't care if you're a lawyer.
Yeah.
But there should also be some regulations before you just get all of these state contracts.
Right.
To make yourself tons of money.
Right.
On the local level,
yeah.
My town's Winslow. The fact that most of our schools in Winslow don't have air conditioning in 2024 seems like it's kind of out of date a little bit, I would say.
Just a little bit.
And the amount of money that we got during COVID.
Yeah.
All these schools got money during COVID to help with their HVAC systems.
Right.
Help the kids.
Right.
I'm like, where did the HVAC money go for our non-air conditioned schools?
Right.
And some people have different thoughts. They're like, oh, I went to school and we didn't have air conditioning and it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not saying it's required.
Right.
But when the school superintendent makes $250,000 a year,
yeah,
you would think at some point we'd be putting air conditioning in these schools. Yeah. Like this past school year, there was days where kids had half days of school because it was too hot.
Yeah.
And they couldn't keep them in the building.
Right.
And I'm like, we spend so much in taxes.
Exactly.
On the local level.
Right.
And our kids are sitting there pouring sweat.
Yeah.
Because we don't have air. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And that's the stuff where, like, the school board, I'm like, I hope if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're looking at that and saying, this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Like, a lot of local issues aren't partisan like we set them out to be on the national level.
Correct.
National issues are like the big things that everyone talks about.
Right.
Your township doesn't control any of that.
Right.
They control your trash getting picked up.
Yeah.
They control your leaves getting picked up.
Right.
Like your taxes,
your
streets a little bit. But like, it's not, so a lot of people have this big like, oh, the local level. They're not far off on a lot of things. Right. And then the school board even more so.
Right.
There's a lot of issues that everybody could agree on.
Right.
To where I don't think if I walked in as a school board member and said, I think we should have air conditioning in the school.
Yeah.
Now you have to find a way to pay for that.
Right.
But I guarantee you there's things in the budget that don't need to be there.
Yeah.
That you can put towards something that's a one-time expense that makes everybody's schooling 1,000 times better.
Right.
So that's probably what I would do on the local level. Air conditioning. Crazy ideas over here, but
I love it though. Now that's just funny. It's it's a lot of the things that as just like normal human beings that we can agree on that would count as wins for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's what honestly ticks people off the most. It's like, not everything has to be Republican, Democrat. Oh, you're red, you're blue, I hate you.
Right.
Hey, let's maybe focus on the kids.
Yeah.
Yep.
100%.
The world is going crazy, clearly. What would you tell people who put all of their hope into these politicians who they keep electing?
Yeah, well, you're going to be disappointed.
Right. Yeah.
100% of the time.
Right.
And you can see that. I mean, if your guy wins or loses, it's not going to fix your problems.
Right.
And we have the culture. Politics is huge. I mean, for some it's a hobby, but other people live and breathe politics. And in reality, it's bigger than that. And obviously we know that coming from a Christian perspective that government is good and that God created government.
Right.
And it's for our benefit. And so you should be involved.
Yeah.
Meaning God didn't create something and say, all right, don't have any involvement in it. No, it makes sense that if it was his idea, that Christians would be involved in it.
Yeah.
But in the right priority order. Meaning it's not, okay, live for government.
Right.
It's do whatever I told you to do. Live following the Bible.
Yeah.
And that's where, even for me, like when we lost the election, some of the people who would have been campaigning were like devastated. And obviously I wasn't happy. Like I just spent thousands of my own money.
Right.
Tons of hours.
Yeah.
And we lost.
Right.
But realistically, the night we lost, I drove down to Ocean City.
Yeah.
And was on the last 4 days of family vacation.
Yeah.
And kind of just decompressed and was like, all right, I tried.
Yeah.
And that's really what I was telling people the whole time. Win or lose, I'm going to try.
Right.
But it's not what I live for.
Right.
And other people, you could see in their reaction, it's all that they live for.
Yeah.
And they didn't even know what to do.
Right.
And some of it's just volunteers, retired people who are here and like, this is everything. Yeah. And then as soon as it falls short, they don't know what to do.
Exactly.
Politics is life.
Yeah.
And as much as I care, and again, I've invested a lot into politics, and it's only been a year and a half that I've actually been like running or supporting and campaigning for people.
Right.
But tons of money. These events are not cheap.
Right.
I went to an event 2 weeks ago, and I was there for 15 minutes because I had somewhere else to be. I paid a lot of money. As I'm leaving, I hit a deer with my car, paid a ton more money, meaning like that was an expensive night for me.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to do it because I think it's important.
Right.
But not as important as what God's called me to do.
Yeah.
And so I think he has allowed me to be involved politically, but called me to ministry.
Right.
And so that's my main focus.
Right.
And then any downtime, days off, free time, nights.
Right.
That's when I go to these events.
The tweets.
And Devin loves spending all my free time at these events.
Yeah.
But
oh gosh.
she only comes when it's a dinner.
Okay.
If it's like a sit down, like fancy dinner,
yeah.
she'll come with me, which is nice because I like not having to go by myself.
Yeah.
But all the other like Republican club meetings, she's like, I'll be home.
I'll see you.
See you later. But no, a lot of people live for it, and you can't. You'll just be miserable forever.
Exactly.
Whether you win or lose, you'll be miserable.
Right. Yeah, you always need that bigger purpose because this stuff comes and goes.
Yeah.
What do you feel is the current state of our political culture, and do you see any good coming from the upcoming elections, obviously, of this year and 2025?
So, political culture is very extreme right now.
Right.
Both sides.
Yeah.
Which scares a lot of people, to be honest. Like when you knock on people's doors campaigning, you hear all types of things.
Yeah.
And then my first time ever doing that was last year. And we were knocking on thousands of doors.
Right.
And I'm in not a super conservative area.
Right.
But I'm knocking on Republicans' doors.
Yeah.
And so I'm knocking, and they're asking me questions. And to be honest, a lot of it is not what you hear in the news.
Okay.
Like the news blows up the extremes because you will watch that.
Right.
But the average person really isn't concerned with the extreme issues most of the time. Right. COVID would be an exception to that because that impacted all of us directly.
Yeah.
But really, that's people care about what impacts them directly.
Exactly.
They don't care about whatever stories coming out of DC.
Right.
They don't know who that is.
Right.
That person may or may not represent them.
Right.
And even if they did, it's minimal impact to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But their family, their businesses, their taxes, their schools.
Yeah.
That's what over and over and over again, they were like, that's what I'm concerned with.
Because it affects them directly.
Yeah. And so the news is blowing everything up.
Right.
And there are big issues. Like nobody's going to argue that.
Yeah. That's for sure.
But it's created this feel that there's this tension everywhere.
Yeah.
And you take the news away.
Right.
And most of that tension goes away too, in my opinion.
Yeah. So the obviously the media plays a huge role in stoking some fear.
And that's both sides, too.
Right, exactly.
The extreme left has their media. The extreme right, there's people that'll say things to make you nervous and prep for civil war.
Yeah.
When, I'm not saying it can't happen.
Right.
But realistically, like the Constitution has been here for a long time.
Yeah.
And is set up in a way to where one person being president can only change so much. And for good reason.
Right.
And I tell my history students that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, tell me what has realistically changed going from 4 years of Trump to Biden.
Right.
I said, you can't list a lot. You can look at the economy and different things like that.
Yeah.
But like day to day, your life, what has changed?
Right.
And they're like,
Right.
I'm like, exactly. I said, that's how it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
But the media will tell you if Trump gets elected, we're going to be in war 24/7. And if Biden gets elected, you're going to have no money. Realistically, probably not going to happen.
Right.
But they want to paint that.
Yeah.
and then you just sit there and you're locked into whatever they have to say.
And you have to ponder.
Yeah. And then they make all the money off of your views and whatever else stuff. Yeah. So the culture is just insane.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't watch news on TV. Like, zero. Okay. If it's a presidential debate or an election night, I'll watch. Yeah. But other than that, X, mainly just X, Twitter is where I find all my news.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you feel as though, well, you kind of already said it, but obviously politics is it dirtier than you thought it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
I expected, if you're running for president, Senate, Congress, there's going to be crazy stuff that happens.
Yeah.
But completely honest, like the race that I ran, there was crazy stuff that happened that, and again, this was a primary, so it was your own party.
Yeah.
And there was still crazy stuff that happened. After the primary, crazy stuff kept happening. Like, I was shocked to run for a state part-time office.
Yeah.
And we have, millions of dollars in our district.
Right.
And funding candidates that weren't actually candidates and putting them on the ballot under some uber conservative tagline funded by Democrats to take votes away from the actual Republicans.
Right.
Like in a part-time election.
Right.
And there's lawsuits about it still, but like the Democrats paid for them to run with a conservative headline.
Right.
And nobody knows who they are. And they got a couple thousand votes. Now, it's not the reason they lost necessarily.
Right.
But it would have been a lot closer. So I'm like, how at this level?
Right.
It's mind-blowing.
You see it, I guess, more up close and personal in a way that you figured, it's just a local race. It's not going to be anything crazy. It's just...
I thought nobody cared.
Right.
And everybody cared. It was wild, dude.
What a stark difference, right? Wild. Is there one issue that you feel, if you were to run later on in life, that would be your strong suit to run on?
So again, from Jersey, I think right now nationally abortion's a huge issue.
Yeah.
But again, the issue they talk about is legal versus illegal.
Right.
Jersey, the abortion laws are so extreme that most people who would even be pro-abortion to a certain extent don't agree.
Wow. Okay.
Like all the way up till the day you're born.
Yeah.
If you come from like a different state, it's free. Like crazy stuff to where people are like, okay. And that's what people always ask me when you're running. Okay, what's your position on abortion? And I tell them, I said, in New Jersey, my position on abortion is no third trimester.
Right.
As a Christian, I'm against abortion.
Right.
But that's not realistic for today.
Right.
So what's the point in getting everybody riled up when that's not a realistic solution?
Right.
And so I tell them, listen, here's what you can do. Right. Like everything is a slow progression.
Right.
You don't go from abortion for everybody, abortion for nobody.
Yeah.
In one election cycle. That's a generational shift.
Yeah.
If you're lucky.
Right.
But you can look. There's a lot of extremism in Trenton.
Oh, I'm sure.
But that one especially, the abortion up to the day they're born.
Yeah.
Anyone with a brain almost says too much.
Right.
And so that would be a huge thing that I would obviously, as a Christian, stand for.
Yeah.
But also, I think it's very doable.
Right.
In that it's so extreme the other direction, we can bring it back and hopefully start to change that.
Right. And that's one of those things where you can, I guess, sort of meet in the middle, I guess you could say, right? Or bring it, from one extreme to another in an area where, hey, okay, you're right.
Right. If there was a pro-abortion legislator who was anti-third trimester, I would work with them.
Right.
to outlaw third trimester. That's not the end goal for me. It may be for him. And some people would look at me and say, "Oh, you're a rhino.
Right.
You're gonna support a bill that only allows it up to the second trimester." But my position is, how many babies did we just save from the third? Like, would I vote for that? I would, because you're saving all of these lives, and then you can focus on the next step. So if someone was willing to work from the other party, absolutely. On that level of it. And again, that does not mean that me and him are the same person.
Oh, no.
Because we wouldn't be. But if there's an area that makes sense and is the right thing or the right direction, you have to, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. No,
it's not all or nothing. And nothing in politics is hardly all or nothing. There's compromise everywhere, and you have to work through things. And if it's the right direction, less babies being aborted, then that's a win for everybody, especially the babies. So
no, that's a very good point. You mentioned obviously going to these dinners and all this stuff. As one of the youngest people that, at least that I know, to run for a seat, what goes through your mind when you obviously go to these meetings? Like I said, very young. But you're having to speak to obviously older men and really explain how you want to fix and change things that they may have messed up. Is that kind of tough?
So thankfully the culture has changed a lot in the last 20 years, meaning just life. We talked about the internet, we talked about technology, you can talk about kids with their anxiety, and a lot of that this older generation is less in tune with. But me, as both a teacher and a youth pastor, can speak directly to those issues. And that was really where I found a lot of people on board. Because I'm speaking with a generation that I'm closely connected with, and they aren't really. And so they were willing to listen. And it, when they hear it, it's almost hard for them to believe. Because again, the group of people we're talking to grew up, and it was like I was working a job for $3 an hour, 25 hours a week after, like crazy stuff, to where our kids now have no idea. But then you tell them, it's like, oh, these kids are on anxiety meds. These kids don't know about their own identity. These kids are just constantly dealing with these struggles, and they're like, how are they? Why? And then when you try and explain things, and they're like, all right, well, obviously this isn't okay. And now some of them are even grandparents at this point, and they're starting to look and see, like, in their own family, this isn't just some story or this small group of people. This is all areas of life, all types of families, all backgrounds. And these are real issues. And so a lot of them were very supportive. And at first I got nervous. I was like, they're going to think youth pastor, 24, this guy has no idea what he's doing. But as soon as I brought up that I worked with teenagers all the time, that was the most positive thing outside of our church sued Governor Murphy. Meaning right there, people were like, I think that's incredible. Because they're looking for people who will care about who is now their kids or grandkids and be able to connect and relate. So it actually, they were always surprised at how young I was. But once I began to get in conversation, a lot of them weren't opposing to the age factor.
I think that's good. I think that's awesome. Because like you said, you can connect to maybe their kids or grandkids, in a better way than they can. That's awesome. How did your family feel when you decided to run for office?
So early conversations were definitely, people were unsure. The only person we knew who had run was Phil Rizzo. And we saw financially it was a lot. Time, it was a lot. And I obviously had the role at the church. And so there was the question of, okay, well, how are you going to balance your job plus this? Should you be doing all of this? Just real life, like that's realistic. Like it's time spent.
Right.
And so really they didn't have a problem with it once I told them I was sure I felt like it was what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
When I was unsure, they were asking the questions, trying to see where I was at on it. Like, oh, this is just something that I think would be fun. Mm-hmm. They would have probably been like, I don't know how fun this is going to be. But when I was like, I feel like this is something I should do.
Yeah.
They jumped on board. And that's including Devin, who's she's the opposite of me politically. She wants to know nothing about politics. She wants to live her life. And she was like, if you want to do it, go for it. Yeah. And I was like, all right, cool.
And that speaks to not just in your regular life, but politically, how important it is to have a spouse, significant other that supports you.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. So Devin's getting quite the shout out.
Yeah.
The
chef. The supportive
that's right.
Political wife. All of it.
That's right. If you could do it all over again, what would you change that you feel as though could help change the outcome?
I would start earlier.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think I went through all of the interviews and things and started campaigning in March for a June election.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we didn't plan on having a June election. We thought it was just going to be a uncontested.
Yeah.
So some of that we couldn't have foreseen.
Right.
But even me deciding to run in January is pretty late in the game.
Yeah.
So I would have thought through and done it earlier. And then I probably would have done more social media advertising. We did a ton of door knocking, which is the most productive form of campaigning.
Okay.
Wow. Face-to-face conversation with a candidate produces more votes than anything else. And you can understand that. Like, someone took the time. So many people, they're like, I've never had anyone knock on my door and ask me to vote for him.
Wow.
So I'll vote for you.
Right.
And I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But then I think about it. I'm like, I don't know that I've ever had anyone knock on my door either.
Right.
So it's true, but it's just hours and hours and hours. So I'd be working at the church teaching, and then I would be out campaigning till dark, 9 o'clock.
Right.
5-6 nights a week.
Wow.
So that was a lot of time.
Yeah.
To where I would do some of that, but then I would also invest some money into Facebook, Instagram, YouTube advertising.
Right.
Because you can direct that message at your audience and reach way more numbers with money, but less time.
Right.
So I would do both, but I don't know that we did very little social media advertising and kind of went the old school.
Right.
And I would try and hybrid both of that.
A little bit more.
And again, I don't know that it would have changed anything, but that's what I would first off.
For next time.
Yeah. For next time.
That's right. Who do you think will win the 2024 presidential election?
That is really difficult. Honest answer?
Yeah.
Michelle Obama.
Yeah.
I honestly, I'm telling you, I honestly believe that's what's going to happen.
So break that down.
Yeah.
Do you think it now, is that at the convention or before?
Probably at the convention.
Okay.
That's what I think they're going to do.
Okay.
If it ends up being Trump versus Biden, I don't see how Biden wins.
Okay.
Just based off of his approval ratings.
Right.
They're like the worst in history, if I'm not wrong. Like, actually so bad.
Right.
And even people that supported him the first time have come out and said, even some celebrities, can't have him again.
Yeah.
Like, he just... And I actually feel bad for the guy, personally, because he doesn't know enough of what's happening.
Right. I think it's a little bit of elder abuse.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's terrible.
Yeah,
parading him around like we are.
Yeah, I feel bad for him.
But I also don't think... I think the Democrat Party knows the same thing and will
switch it up.
And if they replace with Michelle Obama, Trump has zero chance, in my opinion, based on the Obama 8 years.
Right.
Because they were very good communicators. Yes. She was very involved.
Right.
And he was very respected, meaning whether you supported him or not, he was very presidential.
Right.
And people would view him as kind of more of the moderate compared to a Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I kind of always think of personable communicators as presidents. Obviously, JFK, Ronald Reagan, and Obama.
Yeah.
Just their connections with people. Like you said, obviously, we don't agree with Obama politically. But just the way that they can connect with people, I noticed was very strong.
He's good at what he does.
No doubt. Yeah.
I watched his weekly videos when he was president in high school. I was in a government class.
Yeah.
And so he was the president.
Yep.
And watched him. And I was always impressed with how he would communicate and interact with people.
Right.
And his wife would be on that same boat.
So, all right,
hot take. Hot take here.
You're leaning towards Michelle.
If she runs, it's over. And I think she will. She says she's not going to, but politicians say a lot.
Yeah. See, me personally, I kind of see maybe a Gavin Newsom.
He could too.
And that's another person that I think when people look at, he's like, oh, this good-looking dude, the slick back hair.
Yeah.
Governor of the fifth largest economy in the world.
Yeah. He would win too.
I don't know. I am curious who Trump will pick for his VP. Who do you?
I don't know what he's gonna do. I would guess it's gonna be a woman.
Well, yeah.
But I don't
want me to tell you who think he's gonna pick.
Who is it?
Kristi Noem.
That's who I would pick first.
Yeah.
Meaning, based on who Trump is and what he needs from a VP.
Right.
Scott, I like a lot, but he's going to be similar to Pence in what he does.
Right.
Ramaswamy's the same person as Trump,
right?
So that doesn't help him,
right?
So to get a conservative female seems to be the move for him.
And with that, obviously being a governor, you get that executive leadership.
She has some experience for sure.
One thing me and Mike have talked about, and I've expressed this before, but when you, as president, obviously you get to select who is in your cabinet, vice presidency. When you have a member of Congress, very popular, and I use this example all the time, take when President Trump selected Jeff Sessions as his attorney general. Jeff Sessions was extremely popular in Alabama. The problem was when he was selected for attorney general, obviously he had to give up his Senate seat. Mm-hmm. They had an election, and just because Jeff Sessions was extremely popular does not mean that the next Republican will be as popular.
Right.
And if many people out there remember, I believe it was Roy Moore was chosen to for the Republican Party to go up against a guy named Doug Jones. Doug Jones was a Democrat. He ended up winning and took over the Senate seat for Jeff Sessions. So as a president, obviously, it's not just who you think is good for the job.
Right.
You also have to think of what are the repercussions, especially as a member of Congress, because that took Republicans from, decent majority, but now they lost the Senate seat. Mm-hmm. And, obviously, like I said, as a presidency, that's some things you have to think about.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of factors.
One day when you're running for president,
it's going to be Kev for VP.
Kev
for VP.
You got to think of these things. But yeah, I kind of see the Kristi Noem.
Yeah.
So I think we'll leave it at that. Is there anything that you wanted to go over, or you thought maybe we would go over that you want to? I feel like we actually covered quite a bit of
I think so.
Of topics.
Oh, it's good.
All right, so like I said, I think we'll wrap it up there. This was a very fun conversation, especially for two political junkies like me and Mike. I do want to thank Mike for taking the time to come over over to Philly to do this interview. Mike is one of the nicest people that I know who really wants to help the next generation in any aspect that he can. And this is one of those episodes where I hope that young people can really tune in and see a good example to to abide by, to look at how they want to mold their lives after, and how they want to try and be an example, just like, like you said, Brother Mike was to you, and you're trying to be to the younger generation. I hope, obviously, the younger generation can look up and say, all right, I want to be like Mike, and not Michael Jordan, Michael Clark. So thank you, Mike. I appreciate you coming, and I'll see you all next time.